So let's get started. This is Rich Pendergast from the Town of Old Lyme's WPCA regular meeting December at 7:35. I'm going to run through, verbalize the agenda quickly, and then we'll start our process. We do have a quorum with 5 WPCA members, and we expect a couple more that we'll put in. So generally our agenda is going to be a call to order, approval of minutes, budget update. The heart of our meeting is the business updates with the septic pump out reminders. We also have a meeting dates for next year. Then we have the Soundview Sewer Miscellaneous Area B sewer project with Clean Water Fund application status and additional funding grants. Then we have correspondence, new business, public comment, and adjournment. So why don't we get started with approval of minutes from November 14th. Can I get a motion from one of the WPCA members? Okay, so I see Randy Nixon has made a motion. Can I have someone who second it? WPCA member?
Dimitri.
Oh, Dimitri. Thank you for joining, Dimitri. Dimitri seconded.
Yeah.
So now time for the public, the open discussion on the meeting minutes. Is there any comments, questions, concerns, adjustments for the minutes from November 14th meeting? Silence.
No.
If you're trying to, okay. Was there a comment? Okay, so all those in favor of approving the minutes from November 14th meeting, I'm going to poll each of you, say yes or no. Randy, do you say yes or no for approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Corey, how do you vote, yes or no?
Yes.
Rob, how do you vote, yes or no?
Yes.
Dimitri, how do you vote, yes or no?
Yes.
Brad, how do you vote, yes or no?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other WPCA members on here, so I don't hear any negatives, so motion carries. The minutes are approved. Now getting to the budget and update expenses, I am going to attempt to share a screenshot of our budget. Give me a second. So what you should be seeing is a snapshot of our budget from the Town of Old Lyme's finance director. What it shows is our operating budget of $61,922, current expenditures year to date that have been incurred and paid, $6,015.93, a balance of $55,906.07. This does not include carryovers. Carryovers are funds that were approved in a previous budget that are earmarked for a certain item that are being used up, but it is taking longer than expected. So at this point, that's our legal budget. Excuse me, that's our budget, but I have a comment about the legal. Before I get into that, does anyone have any questions about this budget update? Any WPCA members? Okay. So I did get an update from our legal department, and this is our bond legal, which so there's two different legal departments. One is the municipal legal that helps us with, determining contracts we need with vendors and so forth and giving some legal advice. Then we have a bond counsel that we use for bonds. And the bond counsel has been working on our clean water fund agreement with the state to get funding for our design of the sewer project in Soundview. They have spent an estimated $9,500. They have not billed us yet. We don't consider it incurred until we get a bill. We expect that bill to come shortly. We are still, well, as of, I believe, 2 weeks ago, we submitted the final documentation and had the final questions from the state, which was also this other part that we expect to get what's called an IFO, an interim funding obligation. And our legal estimates that an additional $5,000 will be needed to finish off this package. That's a total of $15,000 in legal expenses that are coming our way, is what I'm trying to say. That will give us funding for our design, and then we can go from the 60% approval to the 90% approval to 100% approval, which are steps that you take in order to do the sewer project. It doesn't mean that it's 60% correct or wrong or not. It's just the stages that the state does this. So the contractor can get paid some amount because it takes, a long time to do this. It doesn't mean that the next stage, the 90%, is another 15 million. It pretty much, I think it's pretty much going to be $15,000 for the whole package, unless we change something, which I don't anticipate changing anything. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. The other thing that is in our budget that's a little bit unusual for us, or not unusual, but it's it hasn't happened every month. We had a lot more work, and our clerk has done, Erica has done more work. When we sent out the pump house notices, we got a lot of phone calls, and there was also some work to send out the pump out notices. The pump out notice, as you know, is a reminder to residents to pump their septic system out every 7 years or sooner. And there's a number of residents that got the letter and agreed to pump out their system, or got the letter and said that they pumped it out, and Erica has forwarded some of these, excuse me, as well as I have, to the septic haulers to have them update the database. Anyways, I'll talk some more about that, I guess, in the next line item, but I just want to say that there's going to be some more expenses. I don't think it'll be a lot of expenses, less than $1,000, and within budget. So, is there any final questions about the budget status before I move on? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Move on to the next item. So the next item is item 4, the 2024 meeting dates. I don't know, has Steve Tsunami joined us?
Yeah. Yep. They look fine to me, Rich.
Okay, so do you want to share them? Are you able to share them?
If I was prepared to, I would have. Hold on. Maybe I can.
Well, I don't know if it's necessary, but basically we're going to do like we do now. It's, for the most part, it's going to be the second Tuesday of every month,
Okay.
7:30 p.m. There are a couple times that we have potential conflicts over the year. When there's like an election, or there's planned meeting or something like that, we sometimes run out of rooms, like we did today, and we switch to a Wednesday, or like there's a national holiday the day before, and it moves everybody's schedule a day. We have to submit these meeting dates to the first selectman's executive assistant, and the meetings poster, and then they kind of map out all the meetings for the year in advance, which is a requirement. So I stalled long enough, Steve. Do you want to share, or do you want to just talk about it?
I'm sorry. Let me see if I can find it. But the meeting dates, I mean, you can't really, I mean, we go through this all the time. It's the second Tuesday of the month, but then if we get bumped, like you have March 15th, you already have that. February 15th, you already have that too. But
Well,
I mean, there's a
the,
couple.
the
So
meeting dates the meeting dates I sent you were from the 2023, so we have to develop the 2024 ones and submit them. So I guess we just wanted to bring it up to let you know, and
all
should
right.
someone be listening,
Yeah.
we're gonna finalize them and submit them to the meeting poster, which is I think Michelle Hayes, who actually does the work, but I think Katie will look at it, and someone will look for conflicts. And usually I might get, if we do it wrong, we get a couple conflicts, or there's somebody we don't know about, some kind of meeting that's happening.
Right.
Anyways,
We won't get a where the hell can't find the um we can't control. I mean, we schedule for every other the second Tuesday of every month. They'll in August will be optional. You know, we submit that and then they tell us whether we can do that or not.
yeah,
So
it's just that it's
all
something
right,
that we're required to do. So okay, I think
I'll get it out. I'll get it out. Who do I send it to? First Selectman's
you
office.
send it. You can send it to the meetings posting, and Katie Balaka, and copy me.
Okay. All right, I'll do that. I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
So now we're moving on to item 4B, which is the septic pump out reminder. I think it went really well, from the point of view that we spent a little bit of postage money. Katie, Erica, and I think Jennifer Datum actually helped kind of put this together and organize it and do some of the work. We've got, I don't know exactly, but we got maybe 20, 30 residents that commented on it, whether there was a mistake that they wanted corrected, whether they said, "Oh, we can't get it to it now. We're out of state," or "We want to do it," or that, thank you for letting us know. So ultimately, the purpose of this pump out letter was to remind people that there's a 7-year pump out. You can pump out earlier if you'd like. This is for pumping out, and it's also inspection. And it goes into a database, and it helps us show to the state that we are trying to minimize any problems by maintaining systems. And there is kind of one issue that came up for discussion with WPCA members, and I don't know if there's something we can do about it. If we have a septic pump out hauler who refuses to enter the haul outs into the database, what do we do about that? Because the way it's set up is that they haul it out, and then they have access, a special access to the database where they can add in, hey, 1 Main Street was pumped out yesterday. They go through and do the inspection, and out of the haulers we have that are normal, 5, 6, 7 of them, I think all submit. One of them doesn't. I'm not going to name the names because I don't know if that's fair, because they might be doing it. They promised that they would do it. I called them directly, and I think Erica had sent messages to them, and they promised. But I raised the concern in case anyone has, well, first off, to know that there's an issue. Second off, there's something that we could do about it. So open discussion. Any WPCA members want to make a comment? You don't have to.
Well, Rich, this is Randy. So we've got a particular hauler who is either unwilling or is not adding this information to the database as required.
Yes. So far, but it's been a month and a half, but they weren't entering it for the last, I don't know, a couple of years. So they got a pass, kind of, by saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know," which they may or may not believe. But I think in another month, if they don't enter in the data, we'll see that they're not gonna
Well, then if they
This is
can't
Brad.
comply, they should be eliminated from approval for doing it.
Yeah, Brad, we'll get to you in a second. Yeah, we'll have to research that to see if we can do that. Brad, do you have a comment?
Yeah, but I concur with that. I mean, if they're not doing what we require on the town level by reporting the meetings, they should be able to do business. Not enough. I mean, it's much around. You know, as much as I'm open-minded and less government, it's very important.
Yeah, I kind of thought this is how this would go. I mean, so we'll take a look to see if they actually improve, and if that is great, try and give them another poke, another reminder, saying, hey, you know, and then we'll maybe research what we could do, or maybe there's a statement we can make, because I don't know if we can legally say residents you can't use this hauler, or if we do an approval process, we'd have to come up with a approval process and, like, you know, go through some kind of requirements that are fair for haulers.
Any jurisdiction in knowing that information?
I don't know if the state has any kind of. I think there's a permit required for trucks over a certain size, and there might be a special permit for hauling hazardous waste.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they were supposed to comply with the guidelines per the state also.
It's a good question.
So, Rich, along those lines of Corey's, there's two things. Number one, how is Ledgely getting this information? If they are, they're supposed to track it.
So we should open up an inquiry into that, because the last time, that's a good point. The last time I talked to Ledgelight about this, there was previous management, and I had to use personal connections to get them to respond to me. I had to have a friend call a friend that gave the cell phone to the person and said, "Will you answer the question?" Which is not how it should work. And they basically said that they have their own system, which I don't, you know. So I, like, you know, we'll have to do some research on that and say, what is your own system, and give us a report.
Yeah, I think really all we have to do is ask them for a report and see if it coincides with our data. You know, I don't think
they have access to our Carmody database system, so I just assume we're using the same system. I mean, why would you use two different systems?
Well, then why don't they say that?
Like I said, maybe with the new management,
Right.
we'll have
So,
better
and then
response.
the second thing that I brought up, I think the last time we spoke about this, is I'm willing to spend money from our mailing budget in miscellaneous if it goes over to mail everyone and tell them, you know, these are the requirements if you have a septic system. They're required to be pumped out every 7 years. You know, we don't issue exemptions. The practice is not to issue any exemptions. We encourage you to use people that will automatically update your data via Carmody, and say these are the people that do that, and these are the companies that don't. We're not responsible to have your information current, and let them decide. And you know, but I mean, maybe you go to this company and say, we're going to be putting out something that says you do not comply, or you do not update Carmody, which is part of what we require for our records to be updated for the customers. We're going to tell the customers, basically, you don't do that service, but these 5 other people do. I don't think the customers care who pumps the stuff out. They would much rather have everything taken care of than go with whomever.
Yeah.
And we could say, we could preface that whole thing by saying, we will notify you when you need to be pumped. You don't have to. You shouldn't be believing mailers that come out saying you have to be pumped.
Well,
we should develop it more. But what I'm saying is, we should put it down as an informational packet, and in there include the companies that update Carmody and those that don't. Say, we're not responsible to update your data. You are.
yes, I agree with all what you're saying from a promotional point of view. We do send out letters of who's beyond pumping, but we don't send out letters that just informational letters to all residents. So I'll give you a point of reference. I think we sent out maybe 1,000 to 2,000 residences about their pumping, and there's like 5,000 residents in town of Old Lyme because we sent out ones that were overdue. Obviously, the more you send out, the more expensive it is. Plus, also the more work it is. I saw somebody had their hand up.
Well,
and it's
actually,
gone away.
Rich, just a correction. It's easier if you blanket every residence because you're not picking anyone out. There's no research. It just goes to everyone. But regardless, I don't want to interrupt anyone else's time.
Well, it's. I don't want to get into the details, but I think Erica would back me up and Katie would back me up that it's not as simple as that. There's a little bit of editing and going to the printer and back and forth and stuff. And so there is. I don't know how significant it is, but if we want, we can do some estimates on that. And we also would have to be careful in what we say, so we don't end up triggering some business saying we're treating them unfairly or illegally. So have to do some work on it.
Right.
Well, Rich, I raised my hand. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brad.
I was going to say that being very into this experience and everything. Built in weeks ago, new house 10 years ago, when we put in what we were told to do, pieces, the video art, all that stuff, yada yada yada. But I think my reasoning is I can't believe that companies that are light funds to be able to pump septic doesn't have to be ported. It seems like it was smart. Like that would be part of getting your professional license. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we make it simple. We make it easy to do. Almost all but one hauler does it, and I don't know if they're just having some trouble, or maybe they're such a big corporation. I don't know, but what happens when they don't do it is we get residents saying, "You sent me a letter saying I didn't get pumped out, but I did," and I'm and residents are looking at us like we screwed up. And it also flips us to saying, okay, now we have to take these records and then update them ourselves, which we can do, but it's more work.
Randy.
Yeah.
Are we not required to update this database by state reg?
No, but we have a sewer avoidance plan that we wrote ourselves that we would have an ordinance, which we do, and this goes way back, like the 1980s, and that we'll monitor it. So us doing the monitoring is this database and demonstrating how do you monitor it? Well, here's our database, and here's the number of residences, and here's people that are in compliance, and here's the people not in compliance, and here's our effort to try to get them in compliance. So we're making reasonable steps to do all that. But if we wanted to, we could rewrite the rules and say we're not going to monitor it, and then we risk the state saying you're not taking care of your business.
Well,
that's probably more detail than you wanted.
It seems to me that we should maybe ask legal, can we add something to the ordinance that requires that any hauler that is used in the town of Old Lyme is required contractually to to report the results, you know, to update the database. At least get an opinion on that.
Okay. So I think that all falls into the research category.
Yes.
Brad, did you want to say something? I'm trying to be inclusive. I don't want to cut you off.
No, well, I think we're on the same page. Whatever level, at state level or town level, I think that they shouldn't be allowed to do any pumping without any kind of issue notification to the town, whatever, or entity it should be, but there should be something. I mean, that should be just common business practice, you know?
Yep.
We're talking about, you know, septics. I mean, you know, not like building a little shed in your house, which I was not know we should write to that, but this is a little bigger to me.
Okay. So I will take the action of doing, well, what I will do is we'll put this down as an action, and I'll ask somebody offline if they want to research the requirements today.
Rich,
as
I'll
it is.
research it. Rich,
Oh,
I'll
okay,
research
Steve?
that. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. That will give me a break. I can do the other stuff.
Do I have permission to contact legal?
Mike Carey, you have to identify that it is a WPCA expense.
Yep.
And just try to be
I'm just gonna
concise with
ask
your
him- I'm gonna
questions,
ask him if-
because every time you talk to him, we get a bill.
I know. Right. I understand that. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send you the questions. All right.
But you can copy me on the questions, I guess, unless you think there's a question that was already answered.
No,
Okay.
I think there's just two questions really is going to be, I mean, I'm sure he's going to say well, I'm not sure because I'm not an attorney, but most likely he'll say we can put it in our ordinance. Enforcing it is the problem. You know, I think that's the haulers are state licensed. And so I think that enforcement, we can put anything we want in the ordinance. Enforcing it is another story. You know, and it'll be
you're right.
difficult.
And Mike might be able to give you advice on, well, if you put in the ordinance, then you can put in a requirement and you can tell residents that it's a requirement.
Right.
The enforcement part, we probably,
Yes.
it's a way to get the statement in, to
You're
make
right.
it legal. We also have to look at probably our existing ordinance and existing state ordinance, so like what it takes to be a state hauler. Maybe the state haulers, they have to report it.
Right. So I'll look at that stuff and I'll send out the questions, but I don't think it would take more than a half hour for Mike to answer, you know, the question that
Okay.
we have basically. All right.
I will send an email to Ledgelight again, and I'll copy you, Steve, asking for
All right.
a report.
I spoke with Steve. Was it Steve?
Yeah, he
From
retired.
Ledgelight?
Yeah.
He retired.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. Yeah, I could also ask Ledgelight for a report if you'd like.
Yeah, I would
Or
love
whatever.
that. No, that would be great.
All right. All right. So I'll take care of all of this issue.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks.
So I was going to move on to the next item. This was a question on this subject. Okay, not hearing any. So Soundview Miscellaneous Area B, the Clean Water Fund application status. So I sent the correspondence summary out to the WPCA members. I'm going to use that to kind of trigger my memory and look at my notes. So this meeting was December 1st, and it was with the beach associations, myself, Steve was invited, the first selectman, the new first selectman, Martha Shoemaker was invited, and she did attend. It was somewhat repeat and reconfirming what we've heard in the past. If you remember that we submitted what the state called an affordability application, where we demonstrated that the combined project was unaffordable and we needed clean water funds. They approved that and reconfirmed that they approved that. The big thing is we were asking for what we call the guide rails of this funding. And the good news is what they did is they're going to use the Clean Water Fund application, which is the same kind of application we use for the design. And it's an application our legal understands and the state understands. And they just edited it to add in Clean Water Fund's grants and principal forgiveness. What's advantage of this is it's all within the state's purview. It doesn't go to ARP funds. It doesn't go to federal funds. It doesn't have other departments that have to look at it or approve it. It's all something familiar with us. Now they gave us the template. It still needs to be filled in with the money and the dates. What they said is up to $15 million or 50% of the project funding. Now this doesn't mean that we get this additional money that we can have suppliers that are more expensive. But what it does mean is that we go out to bid again. We get a more competitive bids we hope to get. It'll make it what is considered affordable in terms of a standard that the EPA uses. We also talked about speeding up or fast tracking the Soundview project's design review. I mentioned how we submitted the 60%. We're hoping that that will get done mid-January, that approval, and then we'll be able to submit invoices and get reimbursement for those funds. That is not within the WPCA budget. What that is we submit invoices from our engineering firm for an approved scope of work to do the design review. They get those funds. They then hand over the documents to the state, and the state will do their review, maybe make comments, edits, suggestions, and they move forward. We end up, those funds will be, if it's like, I'll give you an example. If it's $100, we'll take 25% as a grant, and the rest of it will be what's called an interim funding obligation, IFO, where we will be obligated as basically a loan long term or short term, and we'll build up those that incurred debt part of this project. Then when we go from design, we can go up to bid. We go to bid, we approve the bids, we go to construction bids, we start building it. The construction part of this will take the design part, pay off those loans, and put that debt into the construction part. Then when the construction part is done, we'll have also an interim funding obligation, minus grants and minus the forgivable principal, the additional funding, and then that'll be paid back over 20 years. So the meeting was really that primary Clean Water Fund guardrail, which we now know and understand. So it gives us a lot more comfort of not some new project, a new document that we have to review that we've never seen before. But it does lead to a question for WPCA members. And right now, that's draft interim or Clean Water Fund agreement that gives us additional funds. The private beach associations are going to use their bond attorney to review it. And this is for the shared resources. This isn't for the private parts or the internals. Here's the question. Do we have our bond attorney also review that same agreement? Some would say that is two attorneys reviewing the same document and you're paying twice. Some others would say it's smart because it's an attorney working for us versus an attorney working for the beach associations and us, because it's all for the shared part. So I kind of want to open up a conversation with that, and I don't know if that leads to a motion or not. But does anyone have a question about what I said, or
I have a
opinion,
question.
or comment? Go ahead, Steve.
I have a question. The additional, well, number one, what is the bond agent is going to be reviewing the loan documentation? Is that what you're asking?
So there's a bond attorney that will review the document, but there's also a bond attorney that will actually prepare the documents for us. It's a requirement that the bond attorney prepares the documents, and it's like a 54-page document. I provided
Okay,
it
so-
in the meeting handouts.
And what document is it? Is it the loan document?
Yes. Well, it's a Clean Water Fund application,
Okay, all right.
which
So-
describes it. Inside that, it has toward the end or middle, it has what's called an IFO, interim funding obligation.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, our bond attorney is going to have to look at this at some
Well,
point.
it's not obvious. That's the question. So this
Well,
agreement is for
who's
the.
going to
Well, let me
prepare
finish.
the
This
document?
agreement is for the shared resources that we're going to be party
Yep.
of, that we'll be contracted with, and that bond attorney that's representing the shared beach associations is going to look at it. So we could say we're okay with that, or we could say we want to have our bond attorney look at it too. That's the question on the table.
Okay, so where, well, there's more questions. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's
Who's
why I
going
asked
to-
it. That's why I brought it up.
Who's going to be taking the loan? There's, all right, let me list
So-
all my questions and maybe you can handle it. If Old Line decided to take the loan, the $15 million loan, do we have to go back out to referendum?
So that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm not supposed to say it's a great question. All questions are great. Right now, the plan is that Old Colony Beach Association will take out and manage that loan. But we have an agreement called the cost sharing agreement, where the town of Old Lyme or the Soundview and miscellaneous area B will own 29.7% of that.
Correct.
So while Old Colony goes out and manages the debt and the bond of that, we will be responsible for 29% of that, and we do not have to go out for a new bond or higher limit because of
Yep.
that. If our expenses exceed our original bond amount, which was 9.5 million, then obviously we have to go out. And right now, it doesn't look like we're going to exceed that at all.
Okay, so because we are not directly the recipient or obligator of this note, I don't see a reason to review it because we're governed. Our responsibilities are governed by the intermunicipal agreement between the beach associations and WPCA. We're not going to be directly receiving, nor are we going to be directly responsible to pay the loan back to the originating party. We're going to be responsible to pay it 29.3% to I guess Old Colony, but
Old
we're not going to
Colony
be responsible.
over 20 years.
Correct. So I don't know what we would. I don't know what we would gain by it.
I don't think we would either. I mean, and I don't want to name drop the attorneys, but they're both prominent attorneys in downtown Hartford. The reason why they're used is because they do this stuff all the time. They're both competent. It's not, some kind of sketchy lawyer or whatever, and they're both very expensive. Because bond attorneys, that's, if you're looking for a career, become a bond attorney because they make pretty good money. At least their rates are high.
So I would recommend not.
Yeah, I don't want to make the decision myself. I kind of had the same opinion, but anyone else? And I think Randy, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the agreement, I mean, I'm not being picky about it, but really an IMA, right? It's an agreement, a separate entitled agreement between us and Old Colony, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So-
it's that we would manage the costs of what's called the shared resources, stuff that we all
Right.
share.
But the loan,
Hold
with
on,
that
hold on.
money,
I want to correct that. Randy, it's an agreement between O-Line WPCA and the three beach associations. That's the cost sharing agreement. It's not just with
But-
Old Colony, it's with all three of them.
But this additional funding agreement, let me explain something that may not be obvious. If it costs our last estimate for the shared resources is 16.5 million. We expect that to go down. This is for an agreement to get a forgivable loan for 15 million.
we lost you.
Loans out of this, if that makes any sense. So what's ever left over, if there is something left over that is not covered by the additional funds, we'll own 29.7% of.
Okay, well, you're leaving me confused. I realize the original agreement was with the three beach associations on the shared asset costs, right?
Yes.
But what I just heard you say, and my understanding from prior discussions, is that this $15 million loan is actually that's being borrowed by or being the responsible party for that is Old Colony, and not the other two beach associations.
Well, it's Old Colony, but there's an agreement that the other two beach associations and Old Lyme and Old Colony share that resource. And the reason they're doing it that way is it's easier to get clean water funds instead of getting 4 loans, getting 1 loan.
Got it. Okay.
And remember, we spent an estimated $15 million filling out our $15,000 filling out our application. Imagine if we had to do 4 applications for the same
Right.
thing.
Well,
No, I
Rick,
understand.
Also, the state approved it as an entity.
Yeah.
They viewed all 4 WPCAs as one entity. So it's got to go to someone. And Old Colony has stepped up and said they would administer it.
Okay, so I understand that. So my feeling is if you've got a real good bond attorney reviewing that agreement, and that's being developed and prepared by yet another bond attorney, I presume.
So it's a Clean Water Fund standard template.
Yep.
It's a prominent bond attorney in downtown Hartford that has done other agreements and the beach association's other agreements. It's shared with us. It's reviewed and approved by the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So there's a lot of checks already in it, and I think we might be wasting money if we have another bond attorney look over someone's shoulder.
No. Well, you guys have satisfied me to just understand how that's being structured, and so my feeling is we don't need another separate expensive legal beagle to review it. So I would agree with both of you on that.
Okay. Does anyone else, WPCA members, want to make a comment or have a question before?
Yeah, Richard, if I may say something.
Yes, Dimitri.
This is gonna be only during construction. After construction is done, so that all paperwork will be brought to the town, and it will be like in town, like in East Lyme town, was the WPCA would have somebody on a payroll who is going to report to WPCA, who is going to report to the to the, a selectman office. It will be scheduled and everything will be put in the deeds, how much money that property should be paying monthly, and that loan will be for 20 years. And this is how it's going to be done. So this only during construction, it may be 2 years, 15 months, 2 years. After it's going to be all calculated, all Colony Beach, just like a trustee for this time. All Colony Beach will have some money, and it will be also paying for the construction, and it's going to be us too involved in it
Yeah,
to
so,
control that.
yeah, so the Town of Old Lyme's WPCA will handle the Soundview miscellaneous area B residents. And we'll have
Yes,
two major expenses. One is the shared resources, if there's any additional expenses that are not covered by the funding. And then what we call the internals, which are the not shared, the pipes in the street in Soundview and to the houses and so forth. So at the end, the construction and all the expenses that will tie together, the Soundview WPCA or the Old Lyme WPCA will be issuing assessments to the residents in their area, and the other private beach associations will be doing the same, and to recover the costs. And the town will be putting in their part of the planning money that was used already, and the legal expenses and paving the roads. So, okay. Any other questions or comments before we go on to the next item?
Rich, are we gonna document that, are we gonna vote on this? I mean, maybe we should have a motion. I don't think we should, I think everyone's in agreement, but I think we should memorialize
okay.
it somehow.
If you, okay, you want to make a motion that we decided not to use the Old Lyme's bond attorney because it would be redundant, something like that?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to make a motion that, the Oline WPCA rely on the expertise of the Beach Association's bonding, attorney to review and, review and approve, the document and, as is. I mean, we have shared interests. I mean, it's not like the beach associations have the same interests as we on this, so.
We do
Uh,
at this situation. Now,
So-
before we go on, Erica, did you get the gist of that motion?
I did.
Good.
Can I
Let
get
me
a-
just, sorry to interrupt, but
we're-
I just
We're
want to
still,
say,
we're,
I
ahead,
agree with
Randy.
I agree with the motion that Steve made, except that he isn't necessarily going to approve it as is, right? He's going to review it and approve it, but he may make changes in it, or he may make
Okay, so-
modifications to it. So
So we
But eventually-
from a hold on, from a Robert's point of view, we do a motion, we second it, and then we discuss, and we might ask Steve to amend his motion to clarify.
okay, my
So
apology.
from a process point of view, I need a second. Can someone second this motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Now
Thank
it's
you.
open for discussion, and Randy's point, I think, if everyone got that, I think maybe we can ask Erica to read back the motion if we need to, but what I thought the motion intended to say was, we're gonna let the private beach association's bond attorney review the Clean Water Fund agreement. I can tell you, Randy, because I've seen these bond attorneys, they don't just rubber stamp anything. they argue with the state to try to approve and change words, and the state refuses, and then they accept it.
Well, I'm sure they don't. I mean, I've never seen a lawyer rubber stamp anything because he makes more money when he doesn't. So,
I guess
That's true. No offense to lawyers, we love you.
no,
Do your job.
my point is just that he's not going to approve it as is, and I'm not trying to be picky, but I think that's important. So,
Yeah. Does anyone want Erica to reread the motion to make sure it captures Randy's concern?
Could I amend it then, before she does that? To say that we
Sure.
accept the final version of the Beach Association's bond attorney?
Okay. Did you get that, Erica?
I mean, eventually there's going to be a final draft that we'll know nothing about. That either we have to give to our bonding attorney to look at, or we just accept it. So I would say the final version of their bonding attorney is acceptable to us.
Okay.
Because
I
there
think-
are no conflict of interest.
So I've lived through this, and you guys haven't. I mean, I've given you the final documents. The bond attorney basically fills in parts and then questions some things with the state's liaison in the Treasury office. They don't really get a chance to change the terms that much, but they do argue some of the things that are not clear. And sometimes the state will go back and amend it's a template they use for everything. But the key part that they do is they prepare a lot of the parts of the documents that's well above my head, and maybe someone could figure it out, but that's what we pay the bond attorney for. So, are there any questions? We're still in this open discussion with this motion from any other WPCA members. So, if there's no questions, and maybe you know, I'm going to start polling for a vote. Okay, we're going to start polling for a vote. And I'm just going to go for the people I see on my screen, no particular order. Dimitri, are you in favor? Yes for this motion
Yes.
or no? Yes?
Yes.
Randy, yes or no?
yes.
Steve, yes or no?
Yes.
Brad, yes or no? I didn't hear that, Brad. I think you were too quick on the. Okay, I'm not hearing Brad. Is anyone else hearing Brad?
No, sir.
He was unmuted, so I think maybe I'm going to go to Corey. What do you say, Corey?
Yes.
Rob, what do you say?
Yes.
Now I'll go back to Brad. Brad? We're not hearing you. And we have enough to say the motion carries. I guess put down Brad as abstain. Sorry, Brad. I'm going to move to the next item, which was related to what we were talking about, and it's just an update on the cost sharing agreement. There's an issue that's come up. The cost sharing agreement is the agreement between the town of Old Lyme and the private beach associations to share the resources such as the pump station, the main forced main that leaves the pump station to on its way to New London, and a shared trunk line. We want to update that, and there's two issues. One, a little bit easier. We have it. If you go back in time, the WPCA members gave me feedback of what they wanted to do with a number of different line items, like the electricity for the lights, or the upkeep of the landscaping, or and we had it set up for we would share the costs based on our 29.7%, or we'd share the costs based on volume. The volume share would be based on using meters. there has been some discussion that we might consider eliminating meters from because it turns out the way the design came out that we would have more than a couple meters, and it's also gotten some feedback that the meters might not be reliable. So the plan is we're going forward with the design with meters. We're going forward with the cost sharing agreement to update it and to amend it to have the option of with or without meters. So I plan on editing this and sharing it with the WPCA members so you can see the changes on it. And the idea is if we decide at a later date to not use meters, the design is easy to do because deleting something and just putting a longer pipe instead of installing a meter in utility and electricity and so forth is less expensive. So, but I wanted to bring that point up and to see if anyone had any questions or concerns with that update.
Where would it get metered if we didn't have the meters?
So the idea in the first idea was like we'd have a meter from Soundview and a meter from Old County and a meter from Miami and Old Shores. But as it turns out, when the pipes come in, the design, it's not going to be that simple. You're going to have Soundview might have a couple pipes coming in, and the same with Miami and Old County.
No, I
because
understand that. Just say we went with a
Oh.
percentage. Where would the percentage come from? Off of what one meter?
The percentage, we have a percentage of ownership based on original agreement that was on the foundation of EDUs. And the EDUs is a foundation from the original engineering estimates. And that leads to a capacity flow that we're buying, not necessarily the flow that we have.
Gotcha.
So, and I don't want to trigger a discussion about redoing the EDUs, which is a total disaster. It's basically an educated guess or an assumption, and you have to have some kind of contract ownership.
Right.
So it's based on. Go ahead.
I would think that the meters were just going to be cost and room for failure.
That's one. Our engineering firm, Wood & Kern, has said that could be the case, especially if the meters are in areas where the flow isn't continuous, where it's like a half a pipe full.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to remember what goes through those pipes.
Correct. You're just adding more maintenance in my eyes.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that we don't come up with a mitigation policy or we do a thing where we do studies every now and then. And the idea was the meters would, if one association or neighborhood started using way more volume, then they would be using more of the life of the equipment. So they should pay more if it's consistent. So one idea is an alternative to that is to use the water consumption data that we might be able to get. It's not 100% because not everybody is on Connecticut water, but it's a good, I guess, estimate. And then possibly we do these like inflow and infiltration studies. So you do some temporary dies or measurement, and you do those studies every couple of years.
Yeah, that's what I was more had in my mind is the meter going in, not necessarily going out.
Yeah, we do have to have a meter going out, 1 meter, which under a forced main, those meters are reliable, but it's also a contractual requirement with the people that are downstream that are transporting and processing our effluent. So we will have at least 1 meter.
Yeah, mainline meter before it goes to the city. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Rich,
Yeah.
I I don't want to debate whether we should have meters or not. I'm for a meter, but what's the mechanism on deciding whether we do use meters or use the estimated EDUs? Like you're going to give an either or, but who decides that eventually?
We did a cost ownership for a flow. So the
No.
EDU
I'm
is
not
the,
asking for, no, you're missing my question. You want to put into the IMA or the cost sharing agreement that'll either be metered or not metered. And I'm asking you, who decides whether we're not going to meter it?
it'd be the beach associations in the town of Old Limes WPCA.
And it would have to be unanimous?
Right now, yes.
Um, all right. All right with that as well. So
Well,
I'm thinking that
it's
eventually the unanimous clause is going to be revised because
that's on the
there may
table
not
too, to make it a majority, like a simple majority that
a 3-1.
you know.
So I'm not in favor of that language being changed right now.
Well, you're talking
I
about
think
the
it should be
unanimous or non-unanimous
No,
language?
no, not nothing to do with the unanimous. I think it should still say metered until we understand
So
exactly if we're
let me,
not going to get metered.
so I don't want to do this agreement again if I don't have to. So the idea is to put in the language that says, here's what we wanted. If we have meters, this item will be by meter or flow, by flow or by ownership. If there's no meters, it'll revert to by ownership.
All right, so if I'm okay with the language as long as if it says that if Soundview or Old Line WPCA decides to meter their inflow going in, then we would pay the percentage of what's metered over
Yeah,
the
that's the intent, Steve.
total. Okay,
That's the intent.
then I'm fine with that.
And I plan to get a copy to you guys to review before we submit it. But I want to bring up this conversation because we can talk about it in this committee meeting. So yeah, so I think we're trying to plan for that option.
But I'm not saying it's not. I'm glad that you're trying to plan for that option. There may be some beaches that may not have the inflow. As far as I&I, we should not be doing any studies of I&I for at least 15, 20 years. They're going to do an I&I before we accept the system to see if there are any leaks.
Right.
It's
Well,
unusual
I
for.
was using that as an example. Should we, instead of using meters, and we feel like one association or one neighborhood is using way more capacity than they thought, that's one way you can do a study, that they do studies on this. It's not breaking new ground. It's something that's done in the industry.
Well, it's done on old pipe, not on new pipe. The new pipe,
Yeah, but
new pipe is pressure
it's a
tested.
different reason, Steve. It's not talking about inflow infiltration. So maybe I just scratch that, saying there a study can be done about a temporary study on the amount of flow going through the pipes beyond
All right, I guess
the water
if it's
usage.
unmetered, I don't know how you know that. If it's
Well,
unmetered,
you
how
do a
do you know that?
study. You do a study. You hire a company that does a study on it.
I understand. Okay, I'm sorry, Rich. I'm going before the study. How would you know if you're using too much if you're not metering it? You have no way of measuring
We
how much
won't
you're
know.
using.
That's the thing. We won't know. We'll go based on the planned capacity that we purchased, and we'll go and everything. We'll pay the bills based on that percent ownership. And if one of the associations of all associations in the town said, you know what, I want to do a study to see how much I'm actually using.
Richard, may I ask a question?
Yes,
EDUs will be paying for construction, correct? For usage is gonna be paid by meters. I think this is the way it will work.
no, we're not doing that way. So you'll get a construction cost and you'll get per EDU an annual fee. So let's say one house is one EDU, you get like $300, annual sewer fee. If you
But
have
there
two
is
houses,
but there would be
you-
additional cost for usage.
no. So the usage is that annual fee. So you have the capital to build the system, and then you have an annual fee that pays for the usage. We don't have a system where we're saying we're going to measure how much you used by each house.
No, I'm not saying each house. I'm not saying each house. I'm saying by total usage that comes to New London.
Well, yes. So if you're referring to the IMA contracts, we'll have a main meter leaving all the effluent leaving the town of Oline,
Correct.
and that will be used with the East Lyme and New London to say how much we have to pay for transport and processing. So yeah, I misunderstood.
In East Lyme, they have usage separated from annual fees because usage could be changing. So this is what it is.
We have a contract in place with East Lyme where the amount of volume we use will be one line item and charged, and that'll be based on the meter that we have. And we also have a line item of buying into the system that they've already built. The buy-in costs for the equipment that's going to move our effluent through their town.
Right. But Rich, our fees to our users will be a mix of usage fees, buy-in fees, contingency funds,
Yes.
everything it takes to run the system.
Yep.
So it's not just usage fees. It's going to be the capital payback. It's everything, really.
Well,
that
there'll
goes
be
into
the residents will get two things. They'll get an assessment of the capital, which will be how much essentially all that stuff. Then there'll be a usage fee or a user fee, which traditionally was called that. And that is one fee that pays for the processing, the maintenance, the rainy day fund,
Correct.
that kind of stuff. And those are usually $300 to $600. It depends on where you are and what it is. While the capital buy-in it's much more expensive, but that's only for 20 years. But the user fees go on for as long as the system runs.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just check my notes here to make sure. Okay. I think that's it on that subject. I want to switch gears to the other updates, which is the IMA intermunicipal agreement with New London. So repeating from last month, we had an IMA that expired September 1st, 2023. On August 31st, we got an email from the town of New London's legal saying that we've negotiated an extension with new terms. They require a compromise for both us, the beach associations, and New London. When we got to the actual Amendment 2 contract, the New London's legal mentioned that there was an additional term change that was beyond the agreement. And quite frankly, we should have agreed to it, but it triggered kind of an escalation of starting negotiations all over. And where we are now is the town of New London requested us. We tried to negotiate from there the terms, and then they sent us a termination letter. We responded back that we disagree with that termination letter. We are in the active process to reach out to the town of New London to schedule a in-person meeting. The new first selectman, Martha Shoemaker, who has stepped into this, gotten some background information, and has reached out to the mayor to have a discussion about it. And a representative from the private beach associations and myself want to meet this Friday with New London. I do not think New London is going to agree to this Friday. We didn't just send a message, but we did get an update today. I wasn't able to share with you because I went to work all day. And the update from New London is they're researching it and they'll get back to us on the date. But we have some options going forward. We're probably not going to have the strategic options in detail here, but I wanted to give you an update on what the process is. And there are some, I feel, and I'll invite Steve to make a comment too, that we should be able to resolve this. And there is leverage that we have. So at that point, Steve, did you want to make any additional comments?
Yeah. So from a DEP perspective, I don't think that the DEP will allow New London not to accept our influence. They've worked awfully hard on this project. They're dedicated, as witnessed by another $15 million of funding. I don't think they're going to go through all of this and then say, well, it's too bad it can't go through because New London is not going to accept your influence. I think that eventually, if it gets to that, the DEP has a number of mechanisms, I believe, which will force New London to accept our influence, and they are the last line, last word in the whole matter. I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope that maybe there's just a misunderstanding in New London on what their rights are and what they can do based on the original agreement, and we'll go from there. I mean, we're negotiating in good faith, I believe. I'm a little surprised New London sent the letter canceling it. We were in the middle of negotiation, trying to get clarification on what an 18-month construction start date actually meant. And then we got a letter saying they canceled it. So I think I don't understand New London's thought process, but I'm pretty sure that by the time of construction, this will all be meted out either individually between the beach associations and New London, or through the DEP itself.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
I agree. In New London, when we talk face to face, I think we get a little bit more understanding. When we talk through intermediaries, things can get twisted. And I agree with you that the state, the deep, they aren't phased about this at all. They're very confident this is going to be fixed. we intend to fix it ourselves if we can. But I mean, the state has leverage, and the state could also even use capacity they already have, if all else fails. But I think they can issue a consent order or administration order. They can't force New London or the financial part, but they can force the actual taking part. But we don't want to do that, and we're trying to reach out to New London. And I also realize that this is a rotten time of the year to try to get a meeting together. So it might take some time, and we have the time. But we thought it was important to give you guys an update on that and allow you to ask any questions you might have. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. I'm not hearing any. So I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, and I know it's getting late, so thank you for your patience. The next item is correspondence, and we've covered some of the correspondence already. Let's see. Get my correspondence notes. So we already talked about the meeting December 1st with Deep and the Connecticut Treasury to do the applications and fast tracking the sound view design review. I gave a copy of this guideline template from the Clean Water Fund, which is something that I guess we're familiar with and use for additional funding. There's also a suggestion, which I'm glad of this, I'm reading this now about the correspondence, where Second Selectman Jim Lampos asked us to update the sewer ordinance that was on the town website, the draft one. We accidentally had the wrong draft, the older draft. So the difference between these two drafts were the updated one is where we had a public notice meeting, and we got feedback about clarifying where the ownership of private property sewer line responsibility is. And after some discussions in meeting, if you remember, we amended the ordinance to say that the owner owns the responsible for the sewer line on their private property and to the private property end, but not responsible for the sewer line in the street that's public. So that was updated. It's on the town website, WPCA page now. And then I put out examples of some of the residents with pump out letters, which we talked about. So we sent out pump out letters, and some residents responded, thank you. Some said the date is not correct. I pumped it out, whatever. And some said that they will pump out their system. So is there any questions about the correspondence that I mentioned from WPCA members? I'm not hearing any, so I'm moving on. Any new business from WPCA members? Next agenda item. I'm not hearing any. I'm moving on to public comment. If you haven't done this before, the way the public comment works is you can make a comment, you can ask questions. We will take down the information, take down notes. We're not getting into a dialogue back and forth. After the public comment session, we may make comments about the public comments. To talk to you, we'll do our best to have you talk, but what you do is you can just say your name, I'll recognize you, you'll have the floor, you can speak. I ask you to limit your comments to WPCA issues. So at that point, would anyone from the public like to make a public comment? And you have to unmute yourself, so there should be a button to unmute yourself. Would anyone like to make a public comment?
Dennis Maluzzo.
Dennis, you're recognized. Go
Going
ahead.
back to your discussion, meters, you're talking about inflow to the pump house from Somview and the three beaches. That does not restrict the property owner from installing a meter on their property in case there is a question as to usage and outflow from the person's property into the system. If there is a problem with charges.
Dennis, we don't normally go back
yeah,
and
I
forth, but I'll answer
understand.
that when you at the end. I took a note.
Okay. That's about all I've got tonight.
Thank you, Dennis. And anyone else like to make a public comment? I'm not hearing any. You might be muted and talking into your microphone. So there's a mute button somewhere on the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna end public comment. One thing I'll say is the homeowners can install meters if they like. And the meters on their property and measuring the outflow going if they like. The meters will be, what we're talking about is a big pipe where it has a whole neighborhood pipe, going into the pump house. And the idea on paper sounds simple to have 3 or 4 neighborhoods. And that way the 4 neighborhoods share in the expenses and they can measure the flow going into the pump house. And if they accidentally or their volume increases to the point where they need to purchase more volume, that's the idea of the meters. But it's expensive to do, and it may not be reliable. And so the worst thing you can do is spend money on something that doesn't work. That's the debate going on now through the engineering groups. So anyways, that's what I'll say about that. I invite any other WPCA members if they want to make a public comment, and then I want to make one final comment after that. Does any of the WPCA members want to make a public comment or respond to a comment?
I may say that private home meters on a sewer line is not going to be registered in any way in the town records. So this is going to satisfy the homeowner, but I don't say, and it will be expensive job to do. So I don't think homeowners would like to have it because it's going to be good for nothing.
Right, but it's not prohibited. Yep. Thank you, Dimitri. Okay, what I was gonna, I'll skip my comment. Doesn't really need my comment. So now I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn. WPCA members, can I get a motion to adjourn, or can I get a second? I made the motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Randy seconded. All those in favor for adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to assume they all said aye, but no one said nay. Motion carries. This meeting's over. Thank you for attending the Town of Old Lyme's regular WPCA meeting. I appreciate you attending. I wish everyone a happy holidays and hope that they get all their shopping done if they have to do some or put up their lights or whatever. Be careful and be safe. And until next time, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.